Speak about something slightly different. I want to speak about Purim, since it's Erev Purim over here. And I want to tell you something very amazing about Purim and about how it relates to us in our times, and how, the spiritual realities, they don't change altogether, and things come back. There are situations that repeat themselves, and that's a lot of what the festivals we have. Those are particular times when what happened pertains to all generations. And we talk about we say a brach, we say Shas Nisim Lavasini B'Yamim B'Hem Bizman. He made a nace for our fathers, B'Yamim B'Hem, in those days, Bizman Hazeh, in this time. So the word in this time means that we're having the same thing now, that it's coming back. It implies the idea that whatever went on then, whatever decree came out then, whatever kind of difficulty we faced then, we're facing again now. It continues to be something that's in the world, and we continue to get saved from it. There's miracles that come back just like they came back then. Okay, so what I'm going to say now is based on something I heard from. Hi, this is what I'm saying today. I'm very excited about this, and I think you guys will find it very interesting. This is something very amazing. There's a Rav in Yeshivat Eli. His name is Rav Levenstein. So he's very what? Yeah. So he's a very deep thinker, a very clear thinker, and it's very exciting to hear his ideas. So he spoke about this recently. So what I'm going to say today is based on what he said. I'm just going to say it over and explain it in my way. And it's something very, very deep and very interesting. I think you'll find it very interesting. Okay. So starting with the Gemara here, the Gemara in Megillah, Yud Beit Daf Aleph. Shal Talmidav et Rabbi Shimon. This is what I passed out to you guys. The students asked Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, Mibnei ma nitchayevu sonen shel Yisrael sheba'oto hador kliya. They said, why? The students asked Rabbi Shimon, why did the enemies of Israel, that's the way of saying Israel, they turned it around, they really meant the Jews themselves, why were they obligated in that generation destruction? So something really crazy happened in the times of Esther and Mordechai in that generation, that we had a threat of complete annihilation over our heads. We almost got completely wiped off the face of the earth as a whole nation. So what did they do that brought that on them? This decree was on them. It was miraculously taken off. So why was it on them? Amr lehem. Amru atem. He said to them, what do you think? He said this to students. He said, students obviously had something in mind. So he says, you want to know, what do you think? Why is that decree on them? Amr lo neshenenu misudato shel oto Russia. So they said because they benefited from the Suda, from the feast, and the rejoicing of that evil person, Akash Varus. So what happened then was Akash Varus made this big feast, right? You guys learned it. You learned I knew Megillah. I know that. That's very good. I saw one of the shirim. I watched it. It was fantastic. Anyway, Akash Varus made this big feast, right? And he wanted all the people to come, all the Jews to come also. And that in itself is pretty not so great, to go to like this whole non-Jewish festivities like that, even if you're eating kosher like they were. But worse than that was that he was celebrating the fact that the prophecy of Yirmiyahu didn't come about. You guys know this, so that's good. I don't have to explain too much. So Yirmiyahu prophesied that we come back to Eretz Yisrael in 70 years. According to his calculation, 70 years had passed. So he was celebrating that the Jews were now staying in part of his kingdom, not going back to Eretz Yisrael. There was going to be no redemption of the Jewish people. So that was part of the celebration. The Jews knew that. And they still went to the Suda, right? So the Jews knowing that, they went to the Suda. They felt that they had a lot of reasons why they felt that it was okay to go, I guess, and they went. So the students said that's why, because they did that, that's why there was a decree of destruction on the Jewish people. In other words, they're sort of cooperating in their own destruction. He's celebrating the destruction of the nation in a certain sense. Akash Varus, and they're okay with that. So that's what the students said. That's what brought down on them the decree of destruction. Yeah.
I heard that the utensils being used were from the temple. Is that correct, or is that just a story?
That's a chazal. Yeah, sages say that. it's part of the whole idea. He was celebrating that now there's no like Jewish nation coming back. That's it. It's us now. We're it. Okay.
Where is Akash Varus in relation to? I mean, this is after Persia conquered, right?
This is Persian Empire.
Yeah, this is
when he was ruling over most of the world.
Ezra and Nehemiah trying to rebuild the temple. Then.
Afterwards, this was during this reign. In other words, during the reign of after things turned around, after the miracle of Purim, then came the return to Eretz Yisrael. So let me go further here. Imkain. Now the Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai said back to the students, Imkain, Shebeshushan Yehargu, Shebekol Olam Kulo Haryahargu. He says, if that was the reason why there was a decree, then it should have been only on the people that went, which was the people in Shushan, in the capital. It wasn't the whole nation that went to this feast. So why was there a decree on the whole nation? That's not the way it works. Even if they were the very special people of the nation, still the whole nation is bigger than the minority. So why was there a decree on? I want to get to some major points. Okay, so I want to move it along a little bit. Why was there a decree on the whole nation? So Rabbi Shimon didn't accept their answer. At least he didn't accept it 100%. Right. So Amrulo, Amrata. So they said to him, okay, so you tell us. Amar lahem meishishtachavu letzelem. He said, because they bowed down to the Tzelem of Nebuchadnezzar. So he said the reason why there was now a decree on this generation of destruction was because 43 years ago, basically a different generation almost, and probably primarily a different generation, they bowed down to the statue of Nebuchadnezzar. So because of that, that's why there was a decree of an annul. So that's really amazing because it was not them, basically. It was not the same empire. It was not the same situation. It was not the same. It was nothing of the same things going on. It was a totally different place, atmosphere, context, people mostly, and so something happened a long time ago, different context. And yet, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai said that's why this decree came on. Okay, so the question is, what does that mean? Well, I mean, what the student said seems more rational. Right now, the Jewish people did something really self-destructive. They brought on themselves this threat of annihilation by sort of letting go of their identity that we're supposed to come back to Eretz Yisrael, and he's celebrating that it's not happening, and we were okay with that. So that's what students said. So Rabbi Shimon said, no, that's not why it happened. It happened because of something happened a long time ago by Nebuchadnezzar. They bowed down to the idol. I'm going to explain to you that story over here. So it's very interesting. It's what is he saying, Rabbi Shimon? It's surprising. I mean, and basically, I can be makdim. I'll already proceed by saying that the difference between the students and the Rebbe is the students said they saw the end story. They didn't see where it started from. And Rabbi Shimon is telling them this was the source of how we got to where we are. You're right. What they did was part of it, part of the problem. It was what came out of the original problem. When that started from the bowing down to the statue of Nebuchadnezzar. So what's the story over there? So if you look in Daniel, Parak Beit, the second parak of Daniel, I totally recommend you guys look at this. Just read through it in English. You know, the Aramaic is very hard actually, but read it in English. And it's fast. It's the greatest stuff. I don't know if you've seen it before, but Daniel. So what it says was like this. It says that, so these were in captivity. Daniel and his friends, with the tzaddikim. There was a group of 4 tzaddikim, Daniel and his 3 friends. So they were in captivity, and they were with the rest of the Jews in Bavel, in the Babylonian exile. And they became like high up ministers. They were chokamim and this and that, and they knew Nebuchadnezzar, the emperor. And then what happened was, Nebuchadnezzar had a dream. The emperor of Babylon had a dream. And he was real upset when he woke up because he'd forgotten the dream, and you know what it meant? And it was like a prophetic dream. It was very, very powerful, and he knew that it was very important, and he forgot it. So he asked all of his sages to come and tell him what his dream was, and tell him the interpretation. So none of them knew what it was. And they all like skirted around. So he decided to destroy all the sages because they couldn't tell him what his dream was. So finally, this got out to Daniel, and Daniel said, "Okay, let me work on this." So he's davened to Hashem, and Hashem told him what it was. So he figured it out. So he came to Nebuchadnezzar, and he told him, "I know what your dream was, and I also know the interpretation." So, and this is what it was. So he told Nebuchadnezzar, he said, "What your dream was? There was this big statue, and the statue had a gold head, and it had silver chest and arms, and it had nechoshes, bronze legs, and iron feet, iron and clay feet. It was this big, big statue. And the head of it, the gold head, that's representing the Babylonian Empire. That's you. Okay, this is your empire. But what you should know is that empires get traded one for the next. An empire rises and it rules over, and then another one rises up and takes over. So after this empire of gold, there's going to be an empire of silver. There's an empire of copper, and then of Barzel. Barzel's iron, yes, iron. So there's going to be 4 empires, and one's going to change the other. So the empires rise, and they get replaced by other ones. So that's what he told him. And then he said, in the end of the dream, what's going to happen is, in the end of the dream, what happened was there was this rock came, and the rock came, and it smashed the whole thing to bits. The whole statue smashed it to bits. And the rock grew and became a big mountain. Okay, that's the dream. I could talk about this a long time, it's very interesting, this. But I want to get to very important points. I want to bring this up to the present day. I'll just tell you a little more about this, the hints in the dream. So the head is Bavel, that's the present one, that's gold. Gold has to do with pride and honor. That was the thing of the Babylonians. They conquered the world because of their pride. The next one was silver. Silver has to do with kesef, means desire. That was the Persians. They wanted to consume everything. They were consumers. They were Bali Taiva. They were. After that was nechoshes, which is the Greeks. Nechoshes means brazen, and has to do with their intelligence. They wanted to conquer the whole world with their intelligence. And the last one is Rome, and Rome is iron. Iron is destructive. That's the current Galut. What? Weaponry. And also, it's very interesting. Also, he said, what I'm telling you now is Maral, by the way. He also says very interesting. Also, he says the gold has to do with.
Also, right?
No, he didn't say that. He says it has to do with the. 1 second. With the. 1 second. Oh, what you're calling the moch? No, I think you're right. I think 1 second. 1 second. I'm getting confused here. Has to do with the. I think the soul. The soul. The nefesh. The nefesh wants to. Yeah, the nefesh wants to rule over. Like the pride comes from, and then the next below it is the desires. That's the body. That's Persia, and then the next one below that is the Greeks. That's the mind. Right. Then afterwards is the Romans, and he says that's speech. Very, very interesting. Maro says it's speech. Like the last Galut, they're going to rule with the power of speech, which is right. If you think about it right now, I'll get back to this point.
What's speech connected to them?
The rest rule. It's a combination of the other ones or something like that. I don't know. Somehow he says it's not the soul. It's not the mind. It's not the body. It's something which combines them. It's speech. I don't know. So that's what he says.
I was trying to understand the connection between iron and speech.
Yeah, I don't know. You're right. I don't remember.
It's like human technology.
Barzel. Okay, let's leave it for a minute.
It's clay as well, though, right?
Clay was well. That was the weak part. Okay, leave that for. That's not so important. I just bring
Did you write this?
the moral in the beginning of Hanukkah. He writes it. Sefer in Hanukkah. In any case, but now I want to get back to my point. It's a little bit of a tangent. So he says like this. So Daniel told him like this is what's going to happen. Okay, there's going to be all these nations switching one for another, different types of galut, right? They're all trying to rule the whole world. Eventually, there's going to be this rock that's going to be the Jewish people. They're going to smash all the nations. They're going to become the Har Hashem. That's the prophecy. I don't think he explained it to him, but that's what the moral explains. And then what happened after that is okay. So he told him his dream. So he praised him, he elevated him, etc. Then what happens is Nebuchadnezzar didn't like that because obviously he was told him that his kingdom was not forever. So he made this big, giant gold statue, all gold, right? Very, very big. And he made a gold statue, and he commanded that everybody has to bow to it. Everybody in the nation has to bow to it. So, and there were a lot of Jews there. The Jews in the Persian Empire and the Babylonian Empire, Babylonians, in the times of Nebuchadnezzar. So basically what happened was, they did. Basically all the Jews bowed, pretty much, except for the four
Daniel,
tzaddikim and the other three.
Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego.
Right. So then what happened was that the three of them, the four of them, basically they all got decreed for death. The 3 friends of Daniel got thrown into the furnace. They came out alive. Nothing. They were unburnt, etc. So, and Daniel also survived. That's what happened. So that's that first decree. So what? So now what Rav Levenstein says is like this. So what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was saying was that during that decree, that when they bowed down to the idol, so it wasn't exactly idol worship, because they were under threat of death. So when you're under threat of death and you're not like actually acknowledging in your heart the idol, so it's not 100% idol worship.
But don't you still have to like die? If
You don't have to. You don't have to. In other words, the right thing to do is to be willing to sacrifice your life. The ideal thing, like the tzaddikim did, that was chassidut. But if you ended up bowing, so it's not considered that you did that. You have to give your life for it. Apparently, there's a big discussion. But that's basically. Just stay with me for a while. Okay, I just want to talk. Let me speak out because it's very important. The details are less important when I get to my point. So basically, that's the interpretation. What ideally they would have given their lives for it, but they didn't. And when they didn't, so in the Mefarshim and the Halacha, they say that they're not considered obligated. You don't kill them for that. You don't punish them for it. You say, we understand what you did. You were forced. And it's not really avodah zarah, because they weren't in their heart. They weren't serving avodah zarah. They're doing it because of fear. So that's different. Okay. So now, that in itself wasn't the worst thing in the world. It wasn't good. They weren't chassidim, but it wasn't the worst thing. But what happened? So this is what happened. After they did that, it was a compromising of the deeper Jewish identity, right? Nebuchadnezzar was saying, our kingdom is what you have to serve. My kingdom, the Babylon kingdom, is forever. This is the ultimate good, right? And you have to bow to it, to me and my kingdom. And they did. So now what happens is, after you do so, if you compromise yourself in that way, even if you have a pretty big justification for doing it, you wouldn't be killed otherwise. So the act of compromising, it tends to be that people do it first time because they were forced, and then afterwards they start to justify it.
It's a trail of submission.
Oh, it's a trail of submission. Beautiful, yes. So that's what happens. So they started, after they first do it because they were weak, instead of admitting they were weak and it was totally wrong, they start to justify it, and it starts to be like more of a way of life, this submission. They start to say maybe that's the right thing to do. So that's what happened. This way explains Rabbi Shimon that over the generations, it got worse. That once we submitted like that to Nebuchadnezzar and his pressure to sacrifice our identity in that way, so it got in some level, it got worse and worse in those 43 years.
It becomes normal.
Until it becomes like, yeah, this is okay. In fact, maybe it's the right thing to do. Exactly. So now therefore it ended up with a decree on what happened on Purim. So again, it's sacrificing our identity as Jews. You come and join in the Suda, where we're celebrating that we're not coming back to Eretz Yisrael. So now the Jews are willing to do that, which is sort of the outcome, and they were okay with that. They were not under threat of death. It became something which is okay. This is political, compromise, right?
You could say that insulting the king by not turning up when specifically invited, it kind of is...
politically incorrect. But he didn't make a decree of death. It was something he was wanting people to come to. It was his celebration. So it was not like Nebuchadnezzar. But so you see that things got worse in a way. Now people did it even without threat of death because they'd come to justify it. So what happened then was, so in other words, there's something inside the Jewish person, and really in every person, who has the ability to stand up against the tyrants that come to erase our essential identity. And this is where we failed. So this is Rabbi Shimon hold that this failure, and it got worse, and it became like justified more and more as time went by. This is what brought about the decree. So now you look at the next pasuk over here, and we'll go to the time of Akash Varus and Haman. So again, what happened was there was another decree. And again, the idea was the Jews have to give up their identity as a Jewish nation. And they were falling into the pressure, and they went to the Suda to be in with the king and in with the culture. And it seems like almost like, you have the idea now that you talk about, you look at, I don't want to say this, but like Reform Judaism, conservative, they erased Eretz Yisrael from their text already. They already accepted the Galut, non-identity. And even all the Jews that are not here, it's a question why aren't they here? and all the Jews that are not keeping mitzvot. Why aren't they keeping mitzvot? In other words, there's a sort of erasing of identity, being succumbing to the pressure of the nations, so what happened then was, so there was this big pressure from Akash Varus and from Haman to erase the Jewish identity. What happens is, look at this pasuk. V'kol avdei melech asher b'shar melech korim mishtachavim l'Haman kikein tziva lo melech. All the servants of the king who were in the gate of the king, they all bowed down and prostrated themselves to Haman, because that's what the king commanded. Mordechai lo yichra v'lo yishtachveh. Mordechai would never bow down and never bow or prostrate himself. So what you see there is he could have done it also. He could have bowed down. It wasn't usher. Even if, let's say, Haman had made himself an avodah zarah, the bow down was because of fear. It wasn't because of a desire to serve, right? So therefore, you could say that it was more logical to work with the situation and wait till things pass, things get better. Except that when a person identifies that their identity is being erased, so you have to stand up against that. That's Mordechai HaYehudi, the idea that what we have to find the inner strength inside ourselves to stand up against the attempts of the emperors and the forces that be that want to erase our nationhood. So this is, in a way, this is like the essence of Judaism. This ability to stand up and stand up against this. He's called Mordechai Yehudi because of that.
Interesting. So what you're saying is during the time of Daniel, because they didn't push back on not bowing down and just kind of took the easy route there.
Things will pass. We'll work with the situation.
They just delayed having to do that.
Right.
To the next generation.
And what happened is it sinks in. It becomes an attitude of submission. And it becomes, people start to justify actually submitting themselves to all kinds of things which they're not paying attention to the fact that their identity is being erased. The Jewish identity is being erased. It's interesting, even, yes?
You said this in regards to like the opinion of Rabbi Shimon, this Rabbi Nelly.
Who's saying this word I'm saying?
Yeah.
Rabbi Levenstein. Yeah. So, yeah. It happens even, the thing happened with Rabbi Akiva also. Now, it happens to be that Daniel and his friends survived miraculously. But at the time of Rabbi Akiva is the same thing. The Romans decreed that we can't learn Torah, and Rabbi Akiva knew that they were erasing our identity. Rabbi Akiva says, no, I'm not going to keep learning Torah and keep teaching Torah in public. And in the end, they killed Rabbi Akiva. So you don't always survive if you go against such a decree. You could give up your life. But what you didn't give up is the leiv, the heart. Like you didn't submit to the erasure of the Jewish nation. So that's what Rabbi Akiva did. And even though he himself was killed, his Rabbi Akiva is still here. He's still with us, right? So that's how it works. So in other words, they happened to be saved, but they didn't know whether to be saved. The four tzaddikim over there in Babel, they also didn't know they'd live. But they were willing to give their lives for this thing. He points out, Rav Levenstein, he says, even among non-Jews, you see a thing like this, or even a different, right now you have the thing in Ukraine. This person, Zelensky, he's an amazing person. He's doing it too, at his level. It's not as high stakes because it's not a Jewish nation, but it's similar in a way. It's the same thing, the person willing to stand up and say, no, I'm not going to work with the Russians because then they're erasing the Ukrainian identity. They're trying to erase the humanity of us, and he's standing up, and that's something we can learn all the more, so we should do that. We should have such an attitude. He gave other examples too, but that's what you see as the greatness. That's why Mordechai Yehudi is the one who was able to take off the decree. So that's the basic report. So what we're saying here is I'm not talking about exactly political activism necessarily. I'm not talking about particular actions when people are trying to undermine our identity. But I'm talking about a certain act of the heart. An unwillingness to bend. When Mordechai would not bend, and everyone bowed down except Mordechai, so Haman was completely distraught. Because that's the truth identifying the falsehood. And when the truth stands up against the falsehood starts to crumble. And then it crumbled from then on. And it's the same thing now also. When people stand up against the false games that are being played to undermine their identity, what happens is, that wins. So nowadays, what do we have nowadays? We have very similar type of situation, dressed up in a new form, which is like Daniel told him, like things switch around, kingdoms switch around, but it's the same idea. The new form we have now is we have an international movement to erase the identity of humanity, of human beings. We have a massive attack on the identity of the human being, and especially on the Jewish one. That's going to be at the center of it, as it always is. So he identifies three areas of identity that's being under attack right now. That it's the job of every person and of the Jewish people especially to stand up against it in the same kind of way. What are the three things? So the big thing is identity of nations. Nations are being erased. There's no nations anymore. There's all kinds of complicated ways of erasing national identities, right? That's one. The second one is the identity of the family. There's no more family. Family is no longer, they're trying to do things that take apart the idea of the family. And the third thing is identity of the individual. Right? In other words, and a family doesn't have a mother and a father anymore. A family could look like this, or it could be the no family. That's not important. That's what they're trying to bring it out. And they bring it out in all kinds of ways. And then the lowest thing is like the individual also. For example, he's a male, he's a female, he's not. So they want to erase the identity of everything. And they certainly want to erase the Jewish identity as well. That's at the center of it all. So it's the same decree. They want to erase the identity of the people, and therefore things might look small. Things like you could roll with them, you could work with them, but the truth is, as soon as you start to bend, then people start to justify the fact that they're bending to it, and they start to see the other side, ki'ilu, as if there's no other side, and then it goes from bad to worse. And so we're now also in a situation like this, when we're up against a decree, and it's the job, especially of the Jewish nation, to defy it. And like if you look in the Megillah, so what happened is first Mordechai defied it, and then he also like built up a plan, and he gathered Talmidim around him and followers. But it started out with really one person. It could be one person. And the idea is that we have to be not naive. He gave examples of Levenstein of how they're trying to, over here in Eretz Yisrael, they're trying to erase our identity as a Jewish nation. One example is he says there was a judge, his name was Aharon Barak. So he started changing the whole system and started making the system that undermines Judaism, that it takes the Jewish identity out of Israel. For example, it used to be that one of the laws that was the basic laws in Medinat Yisrael was that they have to consult the Torah. The Torah was considered one source of law, an important source of law. When they're trying to figure out a law, they don't have a good source, they're not sure how to decide anything, they should look into the Talmudic law, into the Jewish law. That's in the basic laws of Israel. Guess what Judge Barak did? Erased it.
When was this?
He was about, not so long ago, about, 40, 50 years ago, I think, I'm not sure. And also there's another example, they like to say, I don't know who did this, but somebody high up in the government erased Sefer Yeshua from the school system. Sefer Yeshua is too Jewish. It's too much Jewish pride. It's too much the sense of this is who we are. This is our land. This is a Jewish nation. We're willing to fight a war, etc. So that was taken out. It was considered too. And
all schools, including the religious.
No, in the state schools. If you're not connected to the state, you can do what you want. State religious schools, yes.
They took it out of the state religious schools?
Yeah, out of the curriculum, yes. So the idea is like this. The idea is that nowadays, in the old days, the idols, you hear this, in the old days, the idols was a more crude form. They made this big golden idol. And they say, we have to bow down to it. Now, the idols are in a different form, but they're just also idols. And they're also they're disguising the desire to erase our identity and to empower the people that are opposed to our identity. So now the idols are these dressed up ideas, which sound very beautiful. And that's why I said before, like the Romans Empire has to do with language. And that's exactly what it is. It's propaganda. And they dress up these ideas like, for example, a nation, if you have a cohesive, proud nation who's proud of their own culture and their own identity and their own history, so then you're excluding someone else. What if a minority is there? What if another nation wants to seek refugee, like the Ukrainians? They want to bring in tens of thousands of non-Jewish Ukrainians. Of course they want to do that because that will erase the Jewish identity. And if you have a national pride, that hurts someone's feelings. So therefore, you have to erase that. That's what they're going to dress it up as. If you have family pride, what about someone who doesn't have family? What if a person has, or let's say individual pride? What if a person has same gender attraction? So you're telling him that family is important, so you're hurting his feelings. So you have to be sensitive. So they dress it up in terms of sensitivities, and what it really is, it's an all-out war on the identity of what it means to be a person, what it means to be Jewish. So throughout the generations, you have basically a war going on, and the main fighters in the war are the Jewish nation, who come with the ethical mission which we got from the Torah, and you have those that want to undo that and undermine that. So that's what he says. It's very interesting. I mean, I guess what I want to just conclude with, I hope there's time for questions and discussions. There is, good. Yeah. So I just want to conclude with it. So that's in a nutshell his word. Extremely interesting to me, extremely powerful. It's these decrees come back. People want to compromise, and they don't realize that when you don't stand up against it, you're losing. Even when it seems small, it's not small. We need people that are willing to stand up against it. It's sort of a life and death type of thing almost. I guess one thing and what he stresses also, Rav Levenstein, it's in the heart. The whole battle is taking inside us. Are we going to identify with the truth and be willing to sacrifice for it, or not? So how do we do that? How do we strengthen ourselves in that way? I would add, I'm adding myself. I think one way is learning Torah. I think when you learn Torah with deep commitment and sincerity, so that's the best way probably. That what happens is when you learn Torah really, really strong, what happens is you're getting your more clear about what's what. You can't be fooled as easily, not nearly as easily. You won't be led off course with sophistic logic, You know what it is. You know what Hashem wants from us. And furthermore, you get connected to that inner commitment, that inner strength, which the Torah gives you, Hashem ozi mo yitain. So that's one of the ways. There's more to it. Obviously, there's a lot to discuss about this. But, and Purim's all about, the Purim is celebrating our victory over this type of pressures and our Jewish independence and, our Jewish independence and strength. So, okay, I guess that's what I want to say. I want to hear what you guys have your reactions. Yeah, Benjamin.
I think it's interesting. First of all, I really like this word. But second of all, I think it's interesting how we say that we're like this, like our biggest quality is chesed, right? Israel. So it's almost like maybe part of the reason why a lot of Jews, ironically,
they get fooled in this way.
Behind some of this is hard for us to combat it is because you can also just see this among us, this is kind of
we fall for those
that they're exploiting that we happen to have a lot of.
Yeah, that's an old story. That's been the problem way back, even in Tanakh. There was this soft side of the Jews which could be manipulated by our oppressors. They do it very consciously. Correct. Yes.
They also understand the value of this. If a missionary finds out that somebody's Jewish, it's like flies on honey.
Yeah. Right.
The Jew doesn't appreciate that it means something that they're Jewish. The missionaries appreciate.
This is where you're going to find a particular strength that stand up. Yeah.
Based on what David said, how rude are we allowed to be towards the proselytizing missionizers? Can we tell them to with vulgarity, since it's avodah zarah, so we don't necessarily have to respect them. Right?
Oh no, of course not.
Or we can say F off to missionaries.
I had a friend who used to tell them that he used to make fun of them. He used to tell them that you guys are you're worshiping a Jewish mamzer, and I'm not interested.
You can do almost anything to them. This is where I learned at Aish, because it's like on. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that if you discover, I think it's a scorpion on Shabbos inside a city, you're allowed to kill it because it's likely that it may bite somebody else and somebody could die as a result and become It's a pekuat nefesh in this guy there.
Also,
How far you
So, but the only thing is that's well, hold on, but I think it's a little bit. This is off the subject because I'm not talking about missionaries.
I'm so sorry.
I'm talking about something that's more worldwide, that's stronger than that. I'm talking about the ways of thinking which are creeping into everywhere. And they're not creeping; they're also being being strengthened by every force of coercion and manipulation and propaganda. And so the person has to go deep down into his heart. So even what Benjamin said before is that they want to appeal to our chesed. But we have to examine ourselves. Are we really being weak? Is this really chesed or is it really weakness?
You are 100% right. The World Economic Forum, probably 6 months ago, actually put out a statement. And it literally said, you will own nothing and you will be happy.
They said that.
They posted on Twitter.
Yeah. There it is, yeah. Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So, but the people aren't paying attention to that. But they're they're paying attention to all the fake messages. That's the thing, that you don't have to be so.
You own nothing. You're the family is the globe.
Yeah.
There's no countries. There's no borders.
Yeah. So they're
there's
racing.
No distinction.
Yeah. So that's what's happening now. So it's like so it says, Baruch ta Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam she'asa nisim la'avoseinu b'yamim hahem b'zman hazeh. That you this is the bracha we make on Purim, that you made miracles la'avoseinu for our forefathers b'yamim hahem in those days b'zman hazeh. We need the same miracle now. We're now oppressed again. We're now facing oppression. We're facing decrees, evil decrees, who want to destroy our identity. And it's a big thing. It's a real thing.
New York State just started sending inspectors to the religious schools in the state, specifically to target the Jewish schools there.
For sure, of course, it's going to happen.
Their goal.
I just want them to teach math or something.
Whatever. There's all kinds of things going to come up. It's going to keep happening. There's going to be more and more pressure that there shouldn't be a Jewish identity or, anything besides the ruling identity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Okay, Shkoch.
Yeah. Thank you. I never saw.